Good evening. I'm glad that you're with me tonight or whenever it is that you're watching this. For the past two Sunday nights, I've been reading to you from the Pilgrim's Progress, the wonderful allegory written by John Bunyan, an allegory of the Christian faith or of the Christian life. And in it, the main character is Christian. Where we left off last Sunday night was with Christian finally making it to the cross, where his burden that he's been carrying on his back is finally removed from him, and in its place he's given the righteousness of salvation is the way that we would understand it. So we pick up tonight there. The author says, I saw then in my dream that he went on thus, even until he came at a bottom, where he saw, a little out of the way, three men fast asleep with fetters upon their heels. The name of the one was Simple, another Sloth, and the third Presumption. Christian, then seeing them lie in this case, went to them, if peradventure he might awake them, and cried, You are like them that sleep on the top of a mast, for the Dead Sea is under you, a gulf that hath no bottom. Awake therefore and come away. Be willing also, and I will help you off with your irons. He also told them, if he that goeth about like a roaring lion comes by, you will certainly become a prey to his teeth. With that, they looked upon him, and began to reply in this sort. Simple said, I see no danger. Sloth said, Yet a little more sleep. And Presumption said, Every fat must stand upon its own bottom. What is the answer, else that I should give thee? And so they lay down to sleep again, and Christian went on his way. Yet he was troubled to think that men in that danger should so little esteem the kindness of him that so freely offered to help them, both by awakening of them, counseling of them, and proffering to help them off with their irons. And as he was troubled thereabout, he espied two men come tumbling over the wall on the left hand of the narrow way, and they made up a pace to him. The name of the one was Formalist, and the name of the other Hypocrisy. So, as I said, they drew up unto him, who thus entered into them into discourse. Christian said, Gentlemen, whence came you, and whither go you? Formalist and Hypocrisy answered, We were born in the land of vainglory, and are going for praise to Mount Zion. Christian, why came you not in at the gate which standeth at the beginning of the way? Know you not that it is written, that he that cometh not in by the door, but climbeth up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber? Formalist and Hypocrisy answered, That to go to the gate for entrance was, by all their countrymen, counted too far about, and that therefore their usual way was to make a shortcut of it, and to climb over the wall as they had done. Christian said, But will it not be counted a trespass against the Lord of the city whither we are bound, thus to violate his revealed will? Formalist and Hypocrisy told him that as for that, he needed not to trouble his head thereabout, for what they did they had custom for, and could produce, if need were, testimony that would witness it for more than 1,000 years. But, said Christian, will your practice stand a trial at law? To which Formalist and Hypocrisy told him that custom, it being of so long a standing as above 1,000 years, would doubtless now be admitted as a legal thing by any impartial judge. And besides, said they, if we get into the way, what's matter which way we get in? If we are in, we are in. Thou art but in the way, who, as we perceive, came in at the gate. And we are also in the way, that came tumbling over the wall, wherein now is thy condition better than ours? Christian said, I walk by the rule of my master. You walk by the rude working of your fancies. You are counted thieves already by the Lord of the way. Therefore I doubt you will not be found true men at the end of the way. You come in by yourselves without his direction, and shall go out by yourselves without his mercy. To this they made him but little answer, only they bid him look to himself. Then I saw that they went on every man in his own way without much conference, one with another, save that these two men told Christian that as to laws and ordinances they doubted not, but they should as conscientiously do them as he. Therefore said they, We see not wherein thou differest from us, but by the coat that is on thy back, which was, as we trow, given thee by some of thy neighbors to hide the shame of thy nakedness. Christian said, By laws and ordinances you will not be saved, since you come not in by the door. And as for this coat that is on my back, it was given me by the Lord of the place whither I go, and that, as you say, to cover my nakedness with. And I take it as a token of his kindness to me, for I had nothing but rags before. And besides, thus I comfort myself as I go. Surely, think I, when I come to the gate of the city, the Lord thereof will know me for good, since I have this coat on my back, a coat that he gave me freely in the day that he stripped me of my rags. I have, moreover, a mark in my forehead of which, perhaps, you have taken no notice, which one of my Lord's most intimate associates fixed there in the day that my burden fell off my shoulders. I will tell you, moreover, that I had been given me a roll sealed to comfort me by reading as I go on the way. I was also bid to give it in at the celestial gate, in token of my certain going in after it, all things which I doubt you want, and want them, because you came not in at the gate. To these things they gave him no answer, only they looked upon each other and laughed. Then I saw that they went all on, save that Christian kept before, who had no more talk but with himself, and that sometimes sighingly and sometimes comfortably. Also he would be often reading in the roll that one of the shining ones gave him, by which he was refreshed. I beheld then that they all went on till they came to the foot of the hill Difficulty, at the bottom of which was a spring. There were also in the same place two other ways beside that which came straight from the gate. One turned to the left hand, and the other to the right, at the bottom of the hill. But the narrow way lay right up the hill, and the name of the going up the side of the hill is called Difficulty. Christian now went to the spring, and drank thereof to refresh himself, and then began to go up the hill, saying, The hill, though high, I covet to ascend. The difficulty will not me offend. For I perceive the way of life lies here. Come pluck up heart, let's neither faint nor fear. Better, though difficult, the right way to go, than wrong, though easy, where the end is woe. The other two also came to the foot of the hill. But when they saw that the hill was steep and high, and that there were two other ways to go, and supposing also that these two ways might meet again with that up which Christian went, on the other side of the hill, therefore they were resolved to go in those ways. Now the name of one of these ways was Danger, and the name of the other Destruction. So the one took the way which is called Danger, which led him into a great wood, and the other took directly up the way to Destruction, which led him into a wide field, full of dark mountains, where he stumbled and fell and rose no more. Shall they who wrong begin yet rightly end? Shall they at all have safety for their friend? No, no. In headstrong manner they set out, and headlong will they fall at last, no doubt. I looked then after Christian to see him go up the hill, where I perceived he fell from running to going, and from going to clambering upon his hands and his knees because of the steepness of the place. Now, about the midway of the top of the hill was a pleasant arbor, made by the Lord of the hill for the refreshing of weary travelers. Thither, therefore, Christian got, where also he sat down to rest him. Then he pulled his roll out of his bosom and read therein to his comfort. He also now began afresh to take a review of the coat or garment that was given him as he stood by the cross. Thus pleasing himself awhile, he at last fell into a slumber, and thence into a fast sleep, which detained him in that place until it was almost night. And in his sleep his roll fell out of his hand. Now as he was sleeping, there came one to him and awaked him, saying, Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. And with that Christian started up and sped him on his way, and went apace till he came to the top of the hill. Now when he got up to the top of the hill, there came two men running to meet him amain. The name of the one was Timorous, and the other Mistrust. To whom Christian said, Sirs, what's the matter? You run the wrong way. Timorous answered that they were going to the city of Zion, and had got up that difficult place, but said he, the further we go, the more danger we meet with. Wherefore we turned, and are going back again. Yes, said Mistrust, for just before us lie a couple of lions in the way, whether sleeping or waking we know not, and we could not think if we came within reach, but they would pleasantly pull us in pieces. Then said Christian, You make me afraid, but whither shall I fly to be safe? If I go back to mine own country, that is prepared for fire and brimstone, and I shall certainly perish there. If I can get to the celestial city, I am sure to be in safety there. I must venture. To go back is nothing but death. To go forward is fear of death, and life everlasting beyond it. I will yet go forward. So Mistrust and Timorous ran down the hill, and Christian went on his way. But thinking again of what he had heard from the men, he felt in his bosom for his roll that he might read therein and be comforted. But he felt and found it not. Then was Christian in great distress, and knew not what to do. For he wanted that which used to relieve him, and that which should have been his pass into the celestial city. Here, therefore, he began to be much perplexed, and knew not what to do. At last he bethought himself that he had slept in the arbor that is on the other side of the hill, and falling down upon his knees, he asked God's forgiveness for that his foolish act, and then went back to look for his roll. But all the way he went back, who can sufficiently set forth the sorrow of Christian's heart? Sometimes he sighed, sometimes he wept, and oftentimes he chid himself for being so foolish to fall asleep in that place, which was erected only for a little refreshment for his weariness. Thus, therefore, he went back, carefully looking on this side and on that, all the way as he went, if happily he might find his roll, that had been his comfort so many times in his journey. He went thus, till he came again within sight of the arbor where he sat and slept. But that sight renewed his sorrow the more, by bringing again even afresh his evil of sleeping into his mind. Thus, therefore, he now went on bewailing his sinful sleep, saying, O wretched man that I am, that I should sleep in the daytime, that I should sleep in the midst of difficulty, that I should so indulge the flesh, as to use that rest for ease to my flesh, which the Lord of the hill hath erected only for the relief of the spirits of pilgrims. How many steps have I took in vain? Thus it happened to Israel for their sin. They were sent back again by the way of the Red Sea. And I am made to tread those steps with sorrow, which I might have trod with delight had it not been for this sinful sleep. How far might I have been on my way by this time? I am made to tread those steps thrice over, which I needed not to have trod but once. Yea, Now also I am like to be benighted, for the day is almost spent. Oh, that I had not slept. Now by this time he was come to the arbor again, where for a while he sat down and wept. But at last, as Christian would have it, looking sorrowfully down under the settle, there he espied his roll, the which he with trembling and haste catched up and put into his bosom. But who can tell how joyful this man was when he had gotten his roll again? For this roll was the assurance of his life and acceptance at the desired haven. Therefore he laid it upon in his bosom, gave thanks to God for directing his eye to the place where it lay, and with joy and tears betook himself again to his journey. But oh, how nimbly did he go up the rest of the hill! Yet before he got up, the sun went down upon Christian. And this made him again recall the vanity of his sleeping to his remembrance. And thus he again began to condole with himself. O thou sinful sleep, how for thy sake am I like to be benighted in my journey? I must walk without the sun. Darkness must cover the path of my feet, and I must hear the noise of the doleful creatures because of my sinful sleep. Now also he remembered the story that Mistrust and Timorous told him of, how they were frighted with the sight of the lions. Then said Christian to himself again, These beasts range in the night for their prey, and if they should meet with me in the dark, how should I shift them? How should I escape being by them torn in pieces? Thus he went on his way. But while he was thus bewailing his unhappy miscarriage, he lifted up his eyes, and behold, there was a very stately palace before him, the name of which was Beautiful, and it stood just by the highway side. So I saw in my dream that he made haste and went forward, that if possible he might get lodging there. Now before he had gone far, he entered into a very narrow passage which was about a furlong off the porter's lodge, and looking very narrowly before him as he went, he espied 2 lions in the way. Now, thought he, I see the dangers that Mistrust and Timorous were driven back by. The lions were chained, but he saw not the chains. Then he was afraid, and thought also to himself to go back after them, for he thought nothing but death was before him. But the porter at the lodge, whose name is Watchful, perceiving that Christian made a halt, as if he would go back, cried unto him, saying, Is thy strength so small? Fear not the lions, for they are chained, and are placed there for trial of faith where it is, and for discovery of those that had none. Keep in the midst of the path, and no hurt shall come unto thee. Difficulty is behind, fear is before. Though he's got on the hill, the lions roar. A Christian man is never long at ease. When one's fright gone, another doth him seize. Then I saw that he went on, trembling for fear of the lions, but taking good heed to the directions of the porter. He heard them roar, but they did him no harm. Then he clapped his hands and went on till he came and stood before the gate where the porter was. Then said Christian to the porter, Sir, what house is this, and may I lodge here tonight? The porter answered, This house was built by the Lord of the hill, and he built it for the relief and security of pilgrims. The porter also asked whence he was and whither he was going. And Christian said, I am come from the city of destruction, and am going to Mount Zion. But because the sun is now set, I desire, if I may, to lodge here tonight. The porter said, What is your name? My name is now Christian, but my name at the first was Graceless. I came of the race of Japheth, whom God will persuade to dwell in the tents of Shem. But how doth it happen that you come so late? The sun is set, said the porter. I would have been here sooner, but that wretched man that I am, I slept in the arbor that stands on the hillside. Nay, I had, notwithstanding that, been here much sooner, but that in my sleep I lost my evidence, and came without it to the brow of the hill, and then feeling for it and finding it not, I was forced with sorrow of heart to go back to the place where I slept my sleep, where I found it, and now I am come. The porter said, well, I will call out one of the virgins of this place who will, if she likes your talk, bring you into the rest of the family according to the rules of the house. So Watchful, the porter, rang a bell, at the sound of which came out of the door of the house a grave and beautiful damsel named Discretion, and asked why she was called. The porter answered, this man is in a journey from the city of destruction to Mount Zion, but being weary and benighted, he asked me if he might lodge here tonight. So I told him I would call for thee, who after discourse had with him mayest do as seemeth good to thee, even according to the law of the house. Then she asked him whence he was and whither he was going, and he told her. She asked him also how he got into the way, and he told her. Then she asked him what he had seen and met with in the way, and he told her. And last she asked him his name, so he said, it is Christian. And I have so much the more a desire to lodge here tonight, because by what I perceive, this place was built by the Lord of the hill for the relief and security of pilgrims. So she smiled, but the water stood in her eyes. And after a little pause, she said, I will call for 2 or 3 more of the family. So she ran to the door and called out Prudence, Piety, and Charity, who after a little more discourse with him, had him into the family. And many of them, meeting him at the threshold of the house, said, Come in, thou blessed of the Lord. This house was built by the Lord of the hill, on purpose to entertain such pilgrims in. Then he bowed his head and followed them into the house. So when he was come in and followed them into the house, and sat down, they gave him something to drink, and consented together that until supper was ready, some of them should have some particular discourse with Christian, for the best improvement of time. And they appointed Piety, Prudence, and Charity to discourse with him, and thus they began. Piety said, Come, good Christian, since we have been so loving to you, to receive you into our house this night, let us, if perhaps we may better ourselves thereby, talk with you of all things that have happened to you in your pilgrimage. Christian said, with a very good will, and I am glad that you were so well disposed. Piety said, What moved you at first to betake yourself to a pilgrim's life? Christian responded, I was driven out of my native country by a dreadful sound that was in my ears, to wit, that unavoidable destruction did attend me if I abode in that place where I was. And Piety said, But how did it happen that you came out of your country this way? And Christian said, It was as God would have it. For when I was under the fears of destruction, I did not know whither to go. But by chance there came a man, even to me, as I was trembling and weeping, whose name is Evangelist. And he directed me to the wicket gate, which else I should never have found, and so set me into the way that it led me directly to this house. Piety said, But did you not come by the house of the interpreter? And Christian said, Yes, and did see such things there, the remembrance of which will stick with me as long as I live, especially 3 things. To wit, how Christ, in despite of Satan, maintains his work of grace in the heart, how the man had sinned himself quite out of hopes of God's mercy, and also the dream of him who thought in his sleep the day of judgment was come. Piety said, Why? Did you hear him tell his dream? Christian said, Yes, and a dreadful one it was. I thought it made my heart ache as he was telling of it, but yet I am glad I heard it. Piety said, Was that all that you saw at the house of the interpreter? And Christian said, No. He took me and had me where he showed me a stately palace, and how the people were clad in gold that were in it, and how there came a venturous man and cut his way through the armed men that stood in the door to keep him out, and how he was bid to come in and win eternal glory. Methought those things did ravish my heart. I would have stayed at that good man's house a 12-month, but that I knew I had further to go. Piety said, And what else saw you in the way? Saw? Why, I went but a little further, and I saw one, as I thought in my mind, hang bleeding upon the tree. And the very sight of him made my burden fall off my back, for I had groaned under a very heavy burden. But then it fell down from me. It was a strange thing to me, for I never saw such a thing before. Yea, and while I stood looking up, for then I could not forbear looking, 3 shining ones came to me. One of them testified that my sins were forgiven me. Another stripped me of my rags and gave me this broidered coat which you see. And the third set the mark which you see in my forehead and gave me this sealed roll. And with that he plucked it out of his bosom. Piety said, but you saw more than this, did you not? Christian said, the things that I have told you were the best. Yet some other matters I saw, as namely, I saw 3 men, simple, sloth, and presumption, lie asleep a little out of the way as I came, with irons upon their heels. But do you think that I could awake them? I also saw formality and hypocrisy come tumbling over the wall to go as they pretended design, but they were quickly lost, even as I myself did tell them. But they would not believe. But above all, I found it hard work to get up this hill, and it's hard to come by the lion's mouth, and truly if it had not been for the good man, the porter that stands at the gate, I do not know that after all I might have gone back again. But now I thank God that I'm here, and I thank you for receiving of me. Then Prudence thought good to ask him a few questions and desired his answer to them. Prudence said, do you not think sometimes of the country from whence you came? Christian said, yes, but with much shame and detestation. Truly, if I had been mindful of that country from whence I came out, I might have had opportunity to have returned. But now I desire a better country, that is, an heavenly country. Prudence said, do you not yet bear away with some of the things that then you were conversant withal? Christian said, yes, but greatly against my will, especially my inward and carnal cogitations, with which all my countrymen as well as myself were delighted. But now all those things are my grief. And might I but choose mine own things, I would choose never to think of those things more. But when I would be doing of that which is best, that which is worst is with me. Prudence said, do you not find sometimes as if those things were vanquished, which at other times are your perplexity? And Christian said, yes, but that is seldom. But they are to me golden hours in which such things happen to me. Prudence, can you remember by what means you find your annoyances at times as if they were vanquished? And Christian said, yes, when I think what I saw at the cross, that will do it. And when I look upon my broidered coat, that will do it. Also when I look into the roll that I carry in my bosom, that will do it. And when my thoughts wax warm about whither I am going, that will do it. Prudence said, and what is it that makes you so desirous to go to Mount Zion? And Christian said, why, there I hope to see him alive that did hang dead on the cross. And there I hope to be rid of all those things that to this day are in me, an annoyance to me. There, they say, there is no death. And there I shall dwell with such company as I like best. For to tell you the truth, I love him, because I was by him eased of my burden, and I am weary of my inward sickness. I would fain be where I shall die no more, and with the company that shall continually cry, holy, holy, holy. Then said Charity to Christian, have you a family? Are you a married man? And Christian said, I have a wife and 4 small children. Charity said, and why did you not bring them along with you? And Christian said, Then Christian said, weeping, oh, how willingly would I have done it, but they were all of them utterly averse to my going on my pilgrimage. And Charity said, but you should have talked to them, and have endeavored to have shown them the danger of being behind. Christian said, so I did, and told them also of what God had shown to me of the destruction of our city. But I seemed to them as one that mocked, and they believed me not. Charity said, and did you pray to God that he would bless your counsel to them? Christian said, yes, and that with much affection. For you must think that my wife and poor children were very dear unto me. Charity said, but did you tell them of your own sorrow and fear of destruction? For I supposed that destruction was visible enough to you. Christian said, yes, over and over and over. They might also see my fears in my countenance, in my tears, and also in my trembling under the apprehension of the judgment that did hang over our heads. But all was not sufficient to prevail with them to come with me. Charity said, but what could they say for themselves why they came not? Christian said, my why my wife was afraid of losing this world, and my children were given to the foolish delights of youth. So what by one thing, and what by another, they left me to wander in this manner alone. Charity said, But did you not, with your life, with your vain life, damp all that you by words used by way of persuasion to bring them away with you? The Christian said, Indeed, I cannot commend my life, for I am conscious to myself of many failings therein. I know also that a man, by his conversation, may soon overthrow what by argument or persuasion he doth labor to fasten upon others for their good. Yet this I can say, I was very wary of giving them occasion by any unseemly action to make them averse to going on my pilgrimage. Yea, for this very thing they would tell me I was too precise, and that I denied myself of things for their sakes in which they saw no evil. Nay, I think I may say that if what they saw in me did hinder them, it was my great tenderness in sinning against God or of doing any wrong to my neighbor. And Charity said, Indeed, Cain hated his brother because his own works were evil and his brother's righteous. And if thy wife and children have been offended with thee for this, they thereby show themselves to be implacable to good, and thou hast delivered thy soul from their blood. And that's where we'll stop for tonight. See you next week.